Welcome. My name is Extravaganza Grotesque, and the film I have for today is The Conjuring. It's a supernatural film from 2013 directed by no other than James Wan. It's the first film of what it is known as the Conjuring universe, and that made James Wan one of the most well-known commercial horror movie makers of the last years. The film is about this family that moved into a new house in Rhode Island, and shortly after, they start experiencing paranormal events, things moving around, and all that jazz. So they get in touch with Ed and Lorraine Warren in order to get help from them to fight evil. The film is based in one of the many real-life cases that Ed and Lorraine Warren investigating during the years, and it actually is a very accurate representation of what happened in real life. So, before I get into the case, let me tell you about the Warrens. Ed Warren was a World War II veteran that studied on his own all about demons, resulting in proclaiming himself a demonologist. Lorraine Warren was a gifted clairvoyant and medium who claimed to be able to communicate with the demons that Ed would discover. They were both members of the Roman Catholic Church and they got married in 1945, making the perfect paranormal couple and definitely the most famous paranormal investigators in the US around that time. In 1952, they founded the New England Society for Psychic Research, which is the oldest ghost hunting group in New England. And they got quite famous after their first case, the Amityville Horror, which I have a video talking about it, so I'm gonna link it here and in the description. So the true story of The Conjuring goes as follows. In January 1971, the Perron family moved into their new house in Rhode Island. They were Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters. Right after moving into their new house, they started experiencing some weird events going on in the place. It was little things at first, like objects changing places from where they were last seen, but they didn't think anything too weird at first because, there was 7 people living in the house, so anyone could have put the broom in a different room, or they could have come into the kitchen with dirt on their feet right after it had been mopped. But things escalated, as it is expected in a haunted house story like this one. So very soon after that, the girls started saying that there were spirits living in the house, like literally spirits living with them. They said that most of the spirits were good spirits, which, is always good to know. However, there was one that was determined to make their life a living hell. Bathsheba considered herself to be the mistress of the house, and she resented their mother because she thought that it was her competitor. And that's when things started getting dangerous. Tired of living with some unwelcome spirits, Caroline decided to do some research on the past history of the house. Because, if you are living with some horrible spirits that keep changing the furniture around, it must mean that the ghost of the past owners came back from the grave to haunt you because now you're living in their house. So she did the research and she found out that the house had been in the same family for around 8 generations, and indeed, several members of the family died with mysterious circumstances surrounding their deaths. Some drowned in a nearby creek. Some others hanged themselves in the attic. There was a case of suicide by poisoning. 4 men froze to death near the house, and there was even a rape murder case of an 11-year-old girl, among other things. Caroline also discovered that during the mid-1800s, a real person named Bathsheba did actually live in the house. And she wasn't very popular because she was thought to be a witch or a Satanist, especially after she was involved in the mysterious death of a neighbor's kid. What happened was that she was looking after the little kid, the baby actually, and he just mysteriously died. When they examined the body, they discovered that there had been a very thin needle inserted in the base of the skull. So immediately everyone concluded that obviously she was a witch and that she had sacrificed the baby to Satan because, during the mid-1800s, accidents didn't happen. She was put up for trial under witchcraft claims and murder, obviously, but because they couldn't find any real solid evidence, she had to be set free. Nevertheless, everyone kept thinking that she was a witch anyway. I bet she was also a ginger. On one occasion, Caroline was lying in the sofa, half asleep, when suddenly she felt like a piercing pain on her leg, like if a needle had gone through her leg and it made her muscles spasm. She said that she got up to check whether there was something that could have caused that pain, but they found nothing. So after she knew about the Bathsheba's story with that baby and the needle on the skull, they were convinced that it was her, the one tormenting them, obviously. However, she wasn't the only one. The girls said that they knew there were more spirits around because they could smell like rotten flesh and the temperature would drop whenever there was a spirit around the place with them. They said that most of the smelly thing and coldness felt in the basement, so they tried to avoid the basement. The thing is, ghosts are very clever, and the boiler was in the basement. So from time to time the boiler would stop working, making them having to come to the basement in order to fix it, because ghosts are very clever and they wanted you to come down, so they made a boiler to stop, obviously, duh. And they also claim that sometimes some beds would rise from the floor and levitate. It got to the point where the family just had enough. They were tired of living with some evil spirits tormenting them. It must be really horrible. So they got in touch with Ed and Lorraine Warren in order to get help from them. Over the course of 10 years, the Warrens came to the house in order to help getting rid of the spirits and learn the story of the spirits that were there and once and for all get rid of them. In one of those times that they came around, they decided to do a seance in order to communicate directly with the spirits so they would know what they wanted and they could, help them transition into a different realm or, I don't know, whatever, ghosts need. During that session, it happened that Caroline got possessed. She apparently started speaking in tongues, her chair started levitating, and that was way too much for the family. Roger, when the session finished, asked the Warrens never to come back because he was really worried about his wife's mental health. He wanted everything to end, so he just didn't want to know anything about spirits or senses or anything ever. Unfortunately, they couldn't move out of the house straight away. They had to live there for a few more years due to financial problems. But finally, in 1980, they were able to move away from the house, start somewhere else in a new place, and they never ever experienced any more paranormal activity around them ever again. So finally, the haunting was over. One of their daughters, Andrea, said that not only she experienced some of the paranormal events herself, but she also saw in secret the seance that the Warrens did, and she witnessed her mother being possessed. She obviously wrote a book telling the whole story in 2011 called House of Darkness, House of Light. As the last fun fact, Lorraine Warren was actually a consultant during the film process of The Conjuring, and she said that she didn't let the director take any more dramatic licenses than what was needed. Sadly, Ed passed away in 2006, so it was just her in the film. Yes, he was a clairvoyant, right? So he could communicate with spirits. I don't know, maybe she was actually communicating with her husband. So somehow they were both, consultants in the film. Maybe. And also, that creepy collection of weird objects that they would get from each case that we see on the film? Well, yes, they did that in real life. They do have that collection, and it has been exhibited in the Warrens Occult Museum in Connecticut. After this, we have reached the end of this video. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do subscribe so I can see you all next time.